Now we're going to be looking at some basic filter functions in DAX. And we're going to be starting with the calculate function. You may have seen me use it once or twice since we started this course. Now, what does the calculate function do? Basically, the calculate function filters the context of an expression. In English, the calculate function basically takes an expression and applies it for certain subset of your data. And what does it, what's the syntax like? The syntax is quite simple. Syntax says calculate, and then you enter your expression, and then you enter your filters. And that's the calculate function. So let's try it out. Assuming we wanted to find the total sales for year 2020, total revenue rather for a year 2020, we can use the calculate function to filter out just the transactions that occurred in year 2020 and calculate the total revenue for them. So let's jump into Power BI and try that. First of all, we're deleting all these measures that we created. Okay, now we're deleting the calculated fields rather. Delete. Yes. Now we delete quantity class too. Now, let's start with calculate function. We're going to create a measure this time, right? Because we want to show total sales just for year 2020. So I'm going to make sure I'm in my measures table, and we'll create a new measure. Let's call it total sales for 2020. Total sales 2020. Let's just merge it together. Total sales 2020, and we say equals to, we're going to use the calculate function, and just going to do shift and enter just so this is a multiple lines. And first I want to enter my expression. I want to find the sum of revenue. That's my expression, sum of revenue. Next I have to enter my filter. I want to filter for the year, so it's basically where the year, where my I should have a date field in that table, where my stock date, will it be stock date now? Transaction date is in 2020, but I think I see a problem. My transaction date doesn't look like it's in the date format. But let's just try it out first. Where my year of, so I can't just say transact, I want to just use the year function that we talked about earlier to extract the year from my transaction date. Where my year transaction date is equal to 2020. So that's my filter. This is my expression. This is what I want to calculate, the sum of revenue, but just where year of my transaction date is 2020. Shift and enter so I can close the brackets and press enter. have total sales for 2020. Let's drag it here and let's convert this to a card. And I can see that my total sales for 2020 is 41 million. I could easily change that to 2019 and see what it means for 2019. So total sales 2019. Let's change this date to 2019 and click on enter. Let's see what that value changed to. So my revenue for 2019 was 44 million as opposed to 2020 41 million. So that's the calculate function. It allows you filter out the context of an expression. Now let's look at the filter function. The filter table returns a subset of a table based on a specified condition. So if you had a big table and you wanted a subset of that table based on a specific condition, the filter table helps you, the filter function, my apologies, helps you do just that. So basically we also use it in conjunction with the calculate function, right? So we use it in conjunction with the calculate function. So basically the filter function takes in two parameters. It takes in your table you want to filter. So it takes the table you want to filter as parameter 1 and it takes the filter expression. So those are the two parameters. So syntax is simple. It's filter and then the table and then the expression, filter expression. So that's basically the syntax for the filter function. So let's look at it in Power BI. And we want to create a new measure. And let's call this new measure high value sales. Basically, we want to define all the sales where the value of the sales amount was high. So when I say sales in this, I mean revenue. So let's call it high value sales, HVS. Or let's just say high value sales, high value sales. Using the filter function, let's say filter, and then again we're specifying our table. So the table you want to filter is this table over here, cycle sales 2019. So cycle sales 2019 2020, and the filter expression is we want to filter for. So how do we define when a sales is high value? Let's agree and say every sale that brings in a revenue of above $100 is a high value sale. So we can say cycle sales, so revenue greater than $100 is high value. And so this filter function basically would return all the high value sales. And let's click on yes. Sorry, I may have done it somewhere. Okay, let's just call this high value sales underscore teaching purposes. So let's do yes. So again, we need to use it in conjunction with the calculate function. So remember the calculate function again takes in two things. It takes in an expression and it takes in a filter. So we can use this filter instead. So let's copy out this filter, Control X, and I can do calculate. Right, calculate, remember, takes in two things. Takes in the expression. We want to find the sum of revenue. And then we need a filter. So we're going to paste that filter. So we're going to filter this guy. So this is, let's click on submit. This may give us an error. Let's click on enter. Let's see if it works. Okay, and then we have that. So basically we have, for all the sales that we made more than $100, the total sales was 84 million. Let's tweak. $100 is too small to be termed high value sales. Let's do 500. I do enter. And for all sales above $500, 81 million. That's nice. So let's make it. Let's see if we have sales above $4,000. So for sales above $4,000, we actually made 52 million for all sales above $4,000. So basically, that's how the filter function works. You can use it as a filter in your calculate function. We'd also be looking at the all function, and basically the all function removes filters from the specified columns or from an entire table. Right, so basically it's when you're trying to ignore filters, it's used to ignore filters. So if we wanted to calculate, let's bring in a filter first of all, just so we can appreciate what the all function does. If we had a filter here, let's bring in a slicer. I'm going to remove all this just for a moment, just for our workload screen. Let's just leave these two so we are not too distracted. So if we brought in a slicer, let's calculate one more metric. I'm just going to create one test metric just so we can explain better. Before we talk about the all function, I'm just going to create something that calculates the total revenue. I think we have this. So let's just do total revenue. Total revenue, remember, is total sales rather. Total sales 2019. So if we bring in a slicer, a slicer would affect also if we want to slice by region, for example. Let's do country. When it's sliced by country, it would affect all these values. So for each country, we can see their values. So it would affect all these values right here. But what happens when we do not want our slicer or whatever filters that are applied to affect the value? And that's where the all function comes in. So if we do this, I'm just going to select all. Let's clear out the filters. Let's create a new files, review the files later. So let's create a new metric in the measure table. And basically I want to calculate all the revenue, and I do not want it to be affected by filters. So let's call it all revenue. Is equal to and I want to calculate. So it calculates, and I can say sum of revenue And my filter, for calculate, you have to specify an expression and a filter. My filter is going to say all. I'm going to use the all function, and I want everything in the sales table in my table cycle sales 2019-2020. So I do not want it to be affected by any filter. So I'm saying I'm going to sum up all the revenue in this table, and my filter is all the table. So whether you're filtering by country, I do not want it to be affected. So let's press check mark, and we're calling it all revenue. So if I bring in all revenue as a visual here, let's convert it to a card. It's 85 million. Now let's try and see if the filters affect it. So let's see if the filters affect it. So let's try for Australia. And you can see for where I did not fix my revenue value and where I did not fix any value, the filters affect it. But for all revenue, it is unaffected by the filter. So that's basically what the all functions do in Power BI. A good application would be if I wanted to calculate a percentage of something. So if I'm calculating percentage of total sales, for example, and I'm creating a measure, percentage is usually, so if we had, I'm just going to show us on a table here. If we had something like this, if we had a table that says um, maybe contribution per country, for example, I had country and contributions, for example, and I had Nigeria, and Nigeria's contribution was 70, and I had UK was 30. The total contribution will be 100, right? If I wanted to find the percentage contribution, it will be each individual over the total. Now, when I'm doing this kind of operations, I would not want the total to be affected by any filter, so I would use the all function. And I'm not doing this practically, but just to give you an insight on how the all function works, I would use the all function to sort of make this denominator fixed. So my formula will be something like let's create a metric. My formula will be something like, if I wanted to calculate percentage of sales, for example, I could create, let's create a new metric. So new measure, let's call this percentage of revenue. Percentage of revenue. And that will be equal to, we're going to use the divide function. And that's like a mathematical function. The divide function takes in numerator and denominator, right? So our numerator is, we want to find the sum of sales depending on what is being selected, sum of revenue divided by, so let's make this look better. Shift enter and tab, shift enter and tab. So sum of sales divided by divided by comma. So numerator comma, my denominator is going to be I'm going to use the calculate function to sort of get, so sum of sales will give me whatever my filter is, it will give me the sum of sales for that filter. So if I selected Germany, for example, my total sales will be 4.3 million. If I wanted to find Germany's percentage sale, it will be 4.3 million divided by the fixed amount, 85 million, which is the total in the data set. So sum of sales will give me, for Germany, for example, will give me 4.3 million. My denominator has to be something that will give me this 85 million. And what will give me this 85 million? How would I get this 85 million and make sure 85 million does not change? I basically will just copy what I had in this all revenue formula, and it is going to be divided by calculate. And what are we calculating? Sum of revenue and want to do all revenue, and then we're going to close that bracket. I'm going to close the brackets for divide, and if we do this, we can find percentage of revenue for whatever country or whatever selection we are selecting, and we are very sure that the denominator would never change because again the denominator has been fixed using the all function. So that's basically what the all function does for us. Now, just to ensure we are not too confused, there are many other complicated functions out there. There's the all except the values function. Well, I would advise that you take out time, go through the documentation, and try to get familiar and acquainted with this. But we've covered some of the basic ones that we can cover. So since we started DAX, we've looked at aggregate functions, we've looked at logical functions, we've looked at filter functions, and I'm almost confident that everybody would be a bit familiar with DAX. In the next video, in the next few videos, we are going to be doing actual visualizations in Power BI, which is majorly why everybody learns Power BI, to do actual visualizations. So stay tuned, try this out. If you get an error, try again, consult documentations and reference materials till you get it. Stay tuned.